Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to this installment of Masters of Craft. This is a very special episode because it was our very first guest in a brand new space with a brand new crew. And you know what? Murphy's Law showed up and we hiccuped in the audio a little bit, but we wanted to salvage the conversation because Aaron was so dope. So we actually ran this entire conversation through multiple AI filters. So you're going to witness the wonders of some artificial intelligence, audio editing, capability, thanks to the hands of Caleb Thorpe, my co-producer and partner in this. And also, Aaron's just dope. So as you listen, you might hear some echoes, some weird things going on, but you know what? It's all good. It's all good, baby. So whether you're watching or listening, please enjoy this conversation. And also, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, all those other things. Click as many buttons as you can, please. All right, Chris Denson's out. Aaron Levant is in. Let's begin.
I'm a big believer of not subscribing to cultural norms. I think there's so many things in our world that have been manufactured to create consumer behavior. Some of these things are pleasant. I'm not knocking the idea of buying your mother flowers on Mother's Day or things that are pleasant, but in general, there are things that are designed to drive mass amounts of consumer behavior or to get you to subscribe to cultural norms. And I like making my own judgments on the things that I want to participate in and I feel organically motivated or interested in versus like, oh, everyone else does X, so you should too.
We intentionally were creating an environment where our customers, a majority of which, 99% of which, are unhappy.
Right.
But for some reason, in this case, that's a good thing. And they wanted more, right? It made them want it more. So it's the reverse psychology of almost everything else that's happening in consumer culture. We want to satisfy. In a way, we want to dissatisfy. The majority of people can't have it, then you know that thing they wanted was hot.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome to, you know what? This is a really interesting moment. Innovation Crush presents Masters of Craft.
Thank you for having me.
So for those who may not know, I want to play a little game of pretend. Let's pretend you were still 19, but you had to also introduce your adult self currently. Well, how would you introduce yourself?
Probably as succinctly as I could, and I try to move on for the moment so I'm no longer the center of attention, but I guess I'm Aaron Levant, and I'm a serial entrepreneur from here in Los Angeles.
Nice. So it's interesting that has been a thread of your career, right? This sort of purveyor of culture. So, walk me through a little bit of the origin story, because I heard there were some rough upbringings, and then you kind of put that into an artistry.
I wouldn't say rough upbringings in that sense, but look, I started off growing up here in the Valley in LA. I, at an early age, was drawn to the same things that most, young men were drawn to, interested in music, particularly hip hop. I was interested in graffiti. I was interested in BMX and skateboard culture. I was interested in all these kind of things at the fray of popular culture, and even at that time, there's a big negative connotation around something like hip hop where my first Tupac CD, my dad ripped it up, threw it away. And it was just like, there's that time when what was it? My
mom did that with Too Short.
Too Short was much more graphic than Tupac per se. But, all the things I was interested in were considered, there was no Banksy in, the mid 90s. There was no, rappers making billions of dollars. All these things were kind of like, it was the point where you had it was Al Gore's wife's name was running over CDs with Tipper Gore was running over CDs with a Steve rollers. Yeah, it's like all some of those it was considered by parents and by authority, as kind of bad things. And but I was drawn to those things. So through an interest in that, and then getting involved with graffiti, getting arrested, getting involved in just normal kind of like teenage flipping shit. I ended up getting kicked out of high school at an early age at 16, and around that time, I had learned myself at home how to do Photoshop, Illustrator, Dreamweaver, which is an early Adobe program, how to do websites, After Effects for motion graphics, Adobe Premiere for video editing, just kind of self-taught the creative suite in early kind of like home computing era. And I started publishing a website at home called westcoastgraph.com. It's kind of like a local graffiti blog. Off of that, I started making t-shirts and doing early e-commerce in the late 90s. And these are all just kind of like homegrown things kind of early before most people were doing that stuff.
Where was that entrepreneurial spirit birthed in you? Because if I got kicked out of high school at 16, I'd probably be on drugs right now. So, but a lot of people don't flip, those kinds of early childhoods into, business. So
I don't really know what it was. I didn't really have too many entrepreneurs in my family. I guess my grandfather was entrepreneurial. I never met him. He died at a young age, but that might have been in my.
I never met him either. So
yeah.
Even before that, I tried to self-publish a car magazine when I was in the 4th grade. I was just been interested in baking stuff. I don't know really where that came from, but it's just kind of something I was interested in doing things. I understood very early on that you do things, you try to monetize them for whatever reason. And whether it's something I learned off TV or learned at school or just kind of innately have, like that car magazine I published in the 4th grade, I took to my next door neighbor who was an Arby's franchisee. And I asked if he'd buy the back cover ad. So that was my first sale, right? So I knew that I had to have like an ad to make the magazine real. Just looking at other magazines that always mad at the back cover. So it's like kind of understanding those things. So not really sure where it came from, but it's been in me.
Slinging Arby's in 4th grade.
Yeah. I wish I still had a copy though.
You should. I'm sure you got to find that somewhere.
Yeah.
Let's fast forward. Obviously, one of the reasons I'm infatuated with your path, I love NTWRK. Kind of walk us through what it is, and then I'll ask you some other nosy questions.
Yeah. So a lot of ways you could describe it, and for better or for worse, it's a difficult company to describe. The elevator pitch has been since the beginning, so today's the millennial, Gen Z, mobile-first version of QVC. So what was QVC to my parents, the grandparents' generation? We have Kathy Lee Gifford selling a sweater on the television. You're calling into the phone to make the order. We have DJ Khaled selling the very Beats headphones of a live streamable first environment, native commerce, right? So the products, the demographic, the talent is different, but the idea is saying that, your live shopping is an engaging, entertaining way to shop, different than going to the mall or buying something off of Amazon, right? And now we've just kind of modernized that for this new audience and made it culturally relevant.
When I think about how you got there, from the trade show era of Agenda and then collaborating with Greed, a number of like trade shows across many cultures, right? Like the jewelry show, there's just so many different angles of what they do. And what you've done, I think about this idea of going from an analog experience, like boots on the ground, people meeting and shaking hands, to now you're like, oh, this is in my phone now.
Yeah.
What was the transition like for you? Like going from idea to execution?
Yeah. I think for me, I spent a good 15 years of my career building IRL events where I was bringing together brands and retailers and media companies together in a room, like a convention center, B2B trade show like Agenda, which was one of my first businesses. And then I evolved that later on into creating ComplexCon, which was the same brands and the same retailers, but serving different purpose. Instead of meeting to make wholesale orders, and they were meeting with consumers, right? And a continual evolution over 15 years to eventually going where the ball was going. So first, B2B was a thing, then consumer was a thing, and then as consumer evolved, digital was a thing. So how do I evolve these relationships that I built over 20 years with these amazing brands, founders, creatives, and just change the service that I was offering them? And then, digital I really saw as the future. So in 2018, when I quit the trade show industry, I really wanted to chase this digital marketplaces, mobile first, live streaming, all these things that are new for me, but the relationships, the brands, the curation is really the same, just bring it to a new format. And, while it's a steep learning curve, it's the continual evolution in that line that of those.
Good. I love that as experienced as you are, right, to launch the next thing takes a little bit of like retooling, reimagining, relearning. Yeah. Like, what was the biggest hump you had to get over personally? And like, was it understanding tech stacks? Was it understanding like, would this work?
Yeah. You spend so much time learning how a convention center works, or then going from B2B to consumer, learning how ticketing works and marketing to consumers. And technology is by far the most difficult transition I've made in my career. Some of those things with one degree of separation of each other from consumer event to B2B event is different, but close enough where I had to grasp it and say, this was basically starting from scratch. So I had to basically, figuratively go back to school and get a new doctorate in a very short, truncated period of time. What I had 10 or 15 years in learning previously.
And went to 5th grade.
Yeah.
Nice.
And start from scratch. And, there's a reason that the prize of technology and the asset values are so high, because if you get it right, it's infinitely scalable, right? And, I didn't understand, engineering. I didn't understand product. I didn't understand these things at a very deep level. I had to build my career. So it was really, literally starting from scratch, and a very challenging but very rewarding experience to do that. And I'm still learning every single day from really, really smart people.
Yeah. The experience in and of itself, I know it started off with like live programming, these live 6-minute shows, and it looked like the amount of transactions that were being done in those 6 minutes was bananas. And I keep thinking about like the psychology of drop culture, because I know like even when I bought the spreads, I was like, this is a little steep, but I'm gonna shove my money over. Or there's a collaboration with Pharrell and Murakami, and this is like this psychology of
oh, this is coming out now and there's limited edition. I need to get that. Like, what did you learn about that? And I think that's very different than like the trade show environments where you're walking around like, oh, cool, right? So yeah, sorry.
No. I think drop culture is something that most really sophisticated brands are learning now, and it's agnostic. First, I think it is something that came from streetwear and sneaker culture. But this idea of scarcity, or what I think is actually perceived scarcity, you're taking the product and you're limiting where it's distributed, you're limiting the time frame it's distributed, and you're advertising that there is only X amount made, drives this emotional behavior from consumers. And that comes across in different ways. It started at maybe like a Supreme line or a Nike drop, but now that can apply to makeup. It can apply to, experiences. It can apply to a hot sauce, right? It can apply to different things. And, there's a great book by Seth Godin, who's an author, called Purple Cow. It's a marketing book. And he talks about like you're in the mall, everyone has a big open window with just like a mannequin. You walk by, someone all of a sudden had a window that was painted all black with a little hole and said, don't look in here. Like there'll be a line out the door for people to just look, right? So people are intrigued by this idea of like perceived scarcity. And, we applied that on NTWRK the same way we applied it at ComplexCon. And, some of the things are truly limited, right? Some things are actually not that much different in the availability versus things we would normally do, but it's that time frame and that immediacy, and really what's the live video does. So I used to love this app, HQ Trivia.
Oh yeah, right. Scott Rogowski.
Yeah, Scott Rogowski. Yeah, a friend of mine now. And
I know Scott too.
Yeah, he's hilarious. But like there was something about when that app came out, it was like Jeopardy, but in this like live environment. I remember like 2 million people were like tuning in live. So I was like, how do you take that and apply it to a product drop? And I was like, basically, that was the inspiration for the product, like that combined with QBC. I was like, how do you create? It's like, oh, the push goes out. Everyone's got to tune in. They miss out on playing the game. How do you make them feel like they're going to miss out from the product drop? I'm like, that combination of like the drop culture with the interface of HQ Trivia and a really amazing product just like created this formula that creates in some of those drops in the early days. You have 50, 70, 90,000 people showing up trying to buy. Maybe we had 1,000 products, sometimes 100 products. And like the majority of people are left disappointed, which is a weird thing. We're in a culture that's also obsessed with customer satisfaction. You go to a hotel, you go to an airline, they send you a survey, were you happy? Well, we intentionally were creating an environment where our customers, majority of which, 99% of which are unhappy.
Right.
But for some reason, in this case, that's a good thing. And they wanted more, right? It made them want it more. So it's the reverse psychology of almost everything else that's happening in consumer culture. We want to satisfy. In a way, we want to dissatisfy. If the majority of people can't have it, then that thing they wanted was hot.
I love that. Like I got goosebumps over that counter-cultural point, right? I think it kind of speaks to what I've learned about you in the brief time that I've known you. Specifically, you had a birthday recently, but you don't care about birthdays.
Even if they're not caring.
Okay, all right. You do care when I say, you just don't believe in what I say. But like, just even that alone, like that peculiarity. Like, why is that? Why don't you believe in birthdays?
I'm a big believer, and I don't believe it much, of not subscribing to cultural norms. And I think there's so many things in our world that have been manufactured, to create consumer behavior, right? It's almost like people talk about the military-industrial complex, right? There's a lot of other mass industrial complexes that aren't military facing that are designed to get you to buy things at Christmas, to get you to, buy an engagement ring, to get you to buy these things on these days, right? Some of these things are pleasant. I'm not knocking the idea of buying your mother flowers on Mother's Day or things that are pleasant, but in general, there are things that are designed to drive mass amounts of consumer behavior or to get you to subscribe to cultural norms. And I like just like making my own judgments on the things that I want to participate in that I feel organically motivated or interested in versus like, oh, everyone else does X, so you should too.
Yeah.
And I take that to a little bit of an extreme in my own life. I only wear this outfit every single day. I have no other outfits. I don't subscribe to the idea of birthdays, but I do other things that other may find weird or what.
I wonder what one of these weird things.
I got to think more about it. I just have my own. I create my own traditions, my own norms, and my own things that are, that I enjoy. That is not because the world told me I had to do X by this age, or I had to, follow the path that everyone else is, right?
Which is again interesting.
I'm going to college. I'm finishing high school. All these things are.
You hear that, kids? No, given the industry you work in, which is all trend, like it's all like, oh, that person has that, I want to do that too.
Yeah.
Like, and you're surrounded by a number of celebrities on any given day. How does that thing about you play out in these environments? Like, everybody's going to parties, or or the perception versus reality.
I think it's just more
in this mix.
I'm not personally a participant in consumer culture. Now, everything I do is actually counterintuitive to what I'm personally interested in and the audiences that I serve. So whether it was Agenda or whether it was ComplexCon or now it's NTWRK or any other thing that I've done, everything I'm doing is actually playing directly down the middle of the most extreme lane of like hyper consumerism, right? I just personally am not interested in buying a watch, having a fancy car, wearing trend-driven clothing. Now Yeezy, obviously, as a brand is, let's say, dead to the world due to the person behind it.
Unforeseen circumstance.
Yeah, whatever you want to call that. But like, while it was hot, anyone I saw wearing that to me is like a sheep. I don't want to be one of the sheep. I want to be my own thing and do things my own way, and not, if everyone else is going one way, I want to go the other way and just like carve out my own lane for myself. Even though what I do for a job is actually driving people down, and I hope they buy more of the trendy shoe, the things like that, and they love it. Some people, that is the thing that they wear that helps them define themselves and express themselves as a person, and why they're different than some guy wearing Dockers or something really boring, right? So there's levels to this. I just feel like I want to
Hagar slacks, whatever.
Okay, hey, very nice.
Women free.
Yeah. So yeah, I want to subscribe to my own ideology.
That's great. I think there's another piece to drop culture, which is, you spoke to it a little bit, like the unique nature of owning something signature or being able to express. My mom taught fashion design for like 30 years. And, I always look at fashion as like the path of least resistance to self-expression, right? Like the car, the house, the artwork, those things that I may aspire to, I might not be able to afford, but I can go to the thrift store and like put a really dope look together and still be unique. So I think there's, like you say, 90,000 people show up to get this thing, but then there's the championing few that are like, yeah, I got it. Right? Like there's I got these part of it. I don't have a question there, but like, I'm just curious as to what your thought is on that, like people, the foam at the top where people are like, yes.
Yeah. I mean, there's different densities to the foam, if you will. There's the people at the way top who are creating, or their friends and family or the influencers getting those things for free to try to get other people to want them either. Then there's the people who got them. I on the street, I see some guy wearing Dior Jordans. I know that like he either paid a lot of money for those or had the hookup, or he's into fashion. He's saying something about himself, and I respect that. For myself, I just never want to be involved in anything at all that like try to signify, express myself through the exhibit of whatever fashion, whatever. And if I walk in a room and I see someone wearing the off-white AJ1s and wearing a off-white jacket and a baked t-shirt, it's like too much of a cool, too much. You know what I mean?
I have the weird thing where I've been observing Gen Z a lot lately, and these clusters of friends that just don't match. Like there's no uniformity, and this could be old man judgment, but it's also like I knew what me and my friends were into. We could all go, like me and my friend high school my best friend from high school used to dress like boys and men. Don't tell anybody I told you that. But there's such a unique form of expression and acceptance. I think that's the other part, is like, whatever you're doing, like, I'm cool with that. I'll rock this.
Can I comment on that?
Sure.
I think that's actually a really positive part of where we are today, which is when I was growing up in the early to mid 90s as a teenager here in Southern California, kids got very clearly grouped into like 5 or 6 different prototypes. There was the jocks, there was the skaters, there was a goth, there was the nerds, and you kind of like very clearly fit into one of these 4 or 5 prototypes, and you all looked the same, dressed the same, the same music. And through the proliferation of the internet and social media, I think you're seeing kids have a vast array of interests, and now it's very hard to pin down. Like, you could look at that one group before, the way they were dressed was the same music it was the same products they bought, and now it's much harder to figure people out because kids have a multifaceted interest. They could dress like a goth and listen to hip hop, and they're hanging out with some kid that dresses like a jock or is a nerd or whatever. It's like, it's all over the place, and I think that's what you across. I think it's much harder to target as a market. I think it's much more diverse and interesting, and what people are interested in, what they're learning, and what content they consume is all over the place. I think it's just a much more interesting group of kids than before. It's like, the same 6 kids are wearing the same shit, listening to the same shit. It's not that interesting.
Sales.
Yep.
We have a really good friend in common, Moshe Fitzgibbons, Selling the product.
Has been history.
Oh my God, too late. Selling the product, and creating the marketplace is one thing. I think one thing you guys have been masterful at is also selling that to other brands. And so when I think about like the Chips-Ahoy collaboration or what Gravy's doing on the platform or just, all these different sort of brand engagements for something they probably essentially don't understand, right? That you, like I said, when you think about demographics or psychographics, like what is this audience really like? You guys know that there's that cycle of sales and education and then obviously a transaction that happens. What's your take on selling the platform to other brands and on all of it?
Yeah. Going back to the beginning of my career, I fancied myself as a creative person. I was a designer. But very early on, I understood the necessity to pick up sales early on. Whatever I was selling, whether it was t-shirts, trade show booths, conventions, and now network. And being sales driven is a really important thing, and being able to combine the ideology of creativity and sales together. And usually those are two walled off disciplines. I think in our organization, the creativity and the go-to-market and the sales is very aligned. And, I think we are very early been monetizing through bringing in, I don't know what else you call it, the corporate America, Fortune 500, non-endemic brands into the platform and giving them access to popular culture in a very authentic way. And, very, very early on in the platform, we brought together Illegal Civilization and this kid, Mikey, who's like a good film director, skate video director. He co-produced that movie mid-80s with Jonah Hill.
Yeah.
When we brought him together with Doritos, you would never think that his brand called the Illegal Civilization, which is like an underground skate brand, with Doritos, right? But being able to do that in a cool way, and kids actually bought the product that we created together. And I think that is one of the key skills that we've cultivated, which is like these up-and-coming creatives want to find new ways to make money. They want to get funding for creative projects. And like these brands want to touch on authentic culture that actually resonates with kids in an authentic way. And how can we do that? I think that's been one of the things that we recognize. And some people who I talk to in the creative field are like allergic to the idea of sponsorship or corporate America. And, that's fine. Those people will do well. But I think there's actually a large group of those creatives that are very eager to try to unlock some of that funding so they can actually subsidize some of their most creative ideas and actually do things they could do on their own. Right. So I think what we do is really important and it is actually solving a problem for both the brands and for the creatives. And so no, that was totally your question.
No, I think it's great because it also, I've always looked at what I call influencer or creator relationships is like, it's sometimes not about the transaction, it's about the opportunity. And if you can empower a creator to do something above and beyond what they've been able to do previously, I don't care if it's Doritos, as long as it's not an unethical brand, right? I don't think Doritos is killing anybody other than heart disease. But I love Doritos. But I just think about that, like, idea of brand safety also as part of that. Cause Illegal Civilization, like there's a little bit of hand holding in the sales cycle to make them truly understand. And then again, convert.
I think a lot of corporate brands are generally, they want to be in the creator economy. But, sometimes their idea of brand safety and who's controversial and who's not, especially in the world we're in now, cancel culture, all these things, like brands are hesitant to touch some people at the bleeding edge of culture. And I think that's an art, trying to get people comfortable with certain people. And it's interesting, sometimes they'll do a national campaign with someone who, shot someone, but then they won't touch this guy because he used the wrong words and severe words. So it's really amazing. And you said, it's a Chris Rock.
Yeah, Dave Chappelle, he shot
someone at Walmart.
He shot him. We're not ready to use N-word yet. This episode. It'll come up maybe episode 11. I promise. No, bro. I don't know. When I think about like you as a leader, before the conversation started, you like make sure you come and see let the founder. And I didn't mean to mock you, but I think that's a really important aspect of how you want to present, and how you also want to honor like the ecosystem of people you build around you. And like, just tell me about like team building and your perspective as a leader.
Yeah. My perspective as a leader changes, grows, evolves, devolves every direction, every single day. When I started a business, I was very young. I had no college, no formal training, never worked at a big company. I just kind of started fresh, but better for us. I think that's an advantage opposed to a disadvantage. But I didn't even understand the idea that I was a leader now. At the beginning, a 2-person organization, a 3-person organization, calendar meeting knows, fully never wanted an agenda. I started with just my friends from high school.
So it was very, very organic, right? And the things I'm doing from a leadership perspective, we're just pushing the ball forward every day. But as I grow now to an organization of 150 plus people in network to, the handful I had at Agenda, right? It's totally changes. So I think, number one, I need to be the person that gets up every day, motivates the team and sets the North Star and, points where we're going and lets them see that I'm aggressively going towards that goal. Because if they don't see me going towards it, then they're certainly not going to do it, right? So I think the idea of like being in the trenches with your troops and working, setting the pace and actually showing them you're willing to work harder than they are is what motivates people to want to follow you. Because if you're just like the person that's standing in the back pointing and say, go do it, go push that rock up the hill, they don't want to do it, right? So I think it's so much about like setting the pace by example is probably one of the biggest things I've learned. And trying to, like something like Gary Vee talks about this a lot, but like being an empathetic leader, I think in the past when I was a bad leader, I was like so obsessed with winning that I was probably not kind, not nice to my team, not empathetic to their personal situations. And like, as I've evolved, being more empathetic while still setting an aggressive pace to win, those two things don't need to be conflicting ideas. You can have a kind of like a fast-paced, results-driven organization that also cares about people. And I think getting good people to want to come work for you is based on them liking you, them believing in you, them liking you as a person outside of, your ability to achieve or not achieve. We have in our industry a lot of things we call like a high-performing asshole. And like, you don't want to be that, right? It's like they win, but like no one wants to work with that person. So it's like, how do you balance the idea of like empathy, likability, and like caring about your team with like getting shit done? I think that's ultimately like when I'm where I'm at balancing. In the past, I probably lean too much one direction or the other.
What was the tipping point for that? Like, was there an incident? Was there a moment, or was it just like somebody was like, "Hey, man," like what? Where did that?
I mean, it's a combination of things. You lose a couple key people or 10x contributors along the way. They go to other opportunities. You reflect on why you lost that person. Being able to hold on to top performers is probably one of the biggest things that you can do in building an organization. And if all the best people are constantly walking out the door, then what do you have, right? And so I think combination of losing some people, getting some critical feedback, and then just doing a lot of listening to podcasts, reading books, doing things like, it's knowledge learned over time through experience and other people's knowledge, and just kind of like letting that absorb it is really how I got there.
Here's something fun.
Yeah.
On LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You started a company called NTWRK a long time ago.
Yeah.
Spelled the same way. And it was described as, hold on, let's see if I can read. Armed with keen knowledge of fashion trends, social media, marketing, and merchandising, we seamlessly tell your brand story in a consistent and focused manner with an unparalleled attention to detail. As do I. What did you say? Like, why recycle the name? Like, why? And, what's the alliteration there?
So I started a company called Agenda in 2003, which is a B2B fashion trade show company. The same year I started another company that was all part of a company called Agenda Showroom, which is an agency. So what people think of what CAA or Endeavor does for actors and musicians, we did for brands. We represented them. We found mostly brands from outside the U.S. and signed them to exclusive deals to run their U.S. sales and marketing distribution in the U.S. Over time, as Agenda Trade Show got big, as Agenda Showroom got big, those two names being the same got confusing. We spun out that business, a new business called NTWRK, which Kellett was actually the president of. That business thrived. And over the years, we signed a company called Herschel Supply of Bags, which ended up being a massive company. And, we got with them in their first year of business, signed them to be exclusive sales deal in the U.S. And that business got so big that over the years, they came and actually acquired the NTWRK from myself or Kellett. But they didn't want the name of the company. They wanted to become their U.S. sales and marketing distribution. And we held on to the name, and I ended up recycling the name onto this new project years later after it had been dormant. So, in the same way that you see someone like Richard Branson, recycling Virgin into all kinds of different, whether it's space or cruises or airlines or record labels, right? Like, had to attach it to the name.
Which is ironic because you can't recycle Virgin.
No.
One time
Maybe that's but, something about the name, like Home Shopping Network,
Right.
People talk about like network effects. People talk about like, what's your, are you well networked? I think like the name to me had a lot of meaning in every purpose when you're trying to build marketplaces or agencies or, it's just like, it has a meaning to me that is very purposeful.
That's beautiful. You're also involved in hot sauce, beach towels. There's cannabis trade show. There's there's like what's the Aaron Levant? I'm gonna say superpower, like because I think when people like flip from one sort of economy or project or business to another, there is like a thread that follows them and ties it all together. The common denominator is you. Like, what's the Levant special sauce? Not just how.
I don't know if there's a Levant special sauce. I think my special sauce is that I'm intellectually curious and I try a lot of things. I've been lucky enough that a lot of those things have worked out. I meet people or I have ideas that are held in common with other people who are my friends or past work associates, and we galvanize around ideas. And then I've been lucky enough, because of some early successes, had the resources to help bring those ideas to reality, which is really means you got a smart group of people sitting around a table with a fun idea. Instead of going out and hoping that someone else will see the value in our idea and ask me to give us money, I've had the ability to put money into those ideas off of an idea dropped out of the back of a napkin. We're able to get some things off the ground faster. And then those companies have gone on to be very successful and raise money and sell, et cetera. So, I think the common denominator is like, I'm constantly engaged in conversation with interesting people, whether those people are extremely successful or people are just starting out, just out of college with a fresh idea, or people that used to work for me have an idea, and I'm able to identify with those people and their hustle, really, like who do I think is a great hustler, who's really creative. And then I can come in early before it really is an investable business idea. We can get those things off the ground. And, I think that's, I guess, the secret sauce that I had.
That's beautiful. And I think in that, in the same vein, there's always a new thing popping up, right? Like, we live in an era right now where everybody's talking about artificial intelligence, Web3, and metaverse, and like you have a pretty solid product in network. And I'm sure there's always like a thought, like, what can we do in this space, and what can we do in that space, and like, well, how do you balance that decision-making process? What do you jump into? What do you leave alone? What do you wait on? What do you test? Like, how does that work in the development?
I'm less disciplined than I should be. And a manifestation of that is, I don't know if it was a year ago or 2 years ago, with this craze around NFTs, right? Everyone all of a sudden went from nothing to being a Saturday Night Live sketch in a matter of 3 months, right? And I allowed myself to take my eye off the ball of the core product that we're building and say, shit. And a lot of people did this, right? Everyone all of a sudden spun up an NFT, something. Still doing it, but it really, I don't remember, like end of 2021, early 2022, it was a fever pitch around this. And I allowed us to take our eye off the ball and say, we're going to launch an NFT vertical. And we made about $2.5 million in a very short period of time. But the time and energy that we lost at taking our eye off a core product, I believe set us back 6 months to a year on the overall company. And, so I would say generally these macro trends, while you shouldn't ignore them, it's really hard to tell which ones are here to stay and which ones are of that. And I think it's best not to just jump and try to stay on top of the trend. You got to see through what you're doing in a really meaningful way and have a maniacal focus on that. And that's the older me being more mature. And I think in the past, and even in the past 2 years, the NFT thing is an example, allowed myself to be distracted by those things. Now, that's what you actually do. Doesn't mean that I haven't read and listen to 20 podcasts about what AI is doing, how it's disrupting, thinking about how that as a productivity tool can change the amount of engineers we need, or how you can incorporate that to increase customer experience. Something like NFTs was just like complete, right? But left turn, complete distraction. So how do you balance that? But I think listening and learning a lot and seeing longevity of things, if something's going to be a real thing, just because you don't do it in the first week doesn't mean it's not going to be here. Sometimes there's something called the second mover advantage, right? Some people out talk about the first mover advantage. I think it's actually proven. If you look at social media, Facebook was not the first social media company, right? We had Friendster, MySpace. Facebook was actually the third mover in that space, really. I don't know where Twitter found my timeline, but like, I think you actually better be a second mover advantage. You don't need to jump right away and then have pulse.
Absolutely. No, I'm a firm believer in it. I think about the title Masters of Craft of the show, which is kind of ironic that I also have a belief that there is no mastery. Just kind of keep going and keep learning things to unlock other layers. But what is one thing that you are continually, wanting to master right now? Talk about some other transparencies in your personal development, but like, what is a thing that you're working on mastering?
Good question. I know we talked about leadership. That's something that I think about a lot. As the organization gets bigger, my day changes from doing individual specific tasks, talking to customers, and those things, to to try to constantly become a better leader and be a more effective leader. And I think that's a constant journey that never ends. I probably will never master that. But I think in general, trying to master just understanding consumer mentality and what makes people tick and what makes people interested in products, services, and what is, other than just like my gut feeling, like, is this going to work? Is this not going to work? By getting a better understanding and getting really down to a science of like how to roll things out, how to create things that people are going to resonate with. And I think that is a lot about, yes, creating an amazing product or service, whatever it is, but it's a lot about storytelling, marketing, and understanding consumer mentality or psychology that goes along with. And, I'm sure you've watched a lot of YouTube videos, things about like the way Steve Jobs would market Apple was never talking about, Simon Sinek has a great video about this, talked about like Apple never made a commercial that said like, buy our computer, it has the most RAM and the most memory, the best warranty. Yep. You never said any of this stuff. It was like, think different, right? It was like, if you're selling a truck, you have it driving through the mud in slow motion and you're like, by the way, it has a good warranty, a great engine. It's like the way the human brain receives information is never logically, it's always illogically followed by logical. And it's like the way I think and want to present information to people starts with logical, and it's actually training yourself to reverse and invert that selling or communication curve is probably the hardest thing I'm trying to master.
Yeah.
And everything we do, internally, externally, wherever.
Yeah, no, it's a complex matrix of decision making, right?
Yeah.
And I think about like even in the spirit of fashion or collectibles and all these things, like sometimes you're like, is that really the thing that's popular right now? Like those Woody boots from the Woody from Toy Story, those big like
Big red boots.
Yes, thank you.
It's an Astro boot.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Like I didn't see that coming. Like I don't think there's like unlike in other forms where you can be a fast follower or you can like, oh, this is consumer behavior, so let's build a technology platform to further that. There's less of a crystal ball in this space. Is that true, or am I making stuff up?
There's no crystal ball. It seems to be people are hyper creative and innovative, can put it out an idea that no one even knew or thought of, or if you explained it to someone in like a investor, like, would you invest in this idea? Most people like bombing on it, right? But then someone puts up that kid, Gabriel from that company, Mischief, is really clever. And like I would say, some of the most clever guys I've met, if they took that to like a sneaker investor and say, can we make this huge red EVA boot that looks like you're in a cartoon? No one would love that, but the consumers see it, and it's like having the courage and the boldness to try to get an idea like that across is what makes it make that breakthrough and totally viral. So, forget what your actual question was, but like, I mean, there's no crystal ball, and most things that, I guess catch consumer attention en masse are usually, going back to the Seth Godin thing, the purple cow, it sticks out. The book is also, can I talk about the window thing? You're driving on a country road for a while, you're like, oh, there's a cow. And after a while, stop looking, how suddenly there's a purple cow. You're going to start looking. So how do you like create that purple cow? And like, that's the art, business, marketing, in anything, whatever segment you're in.
Purple cops would be a brain. That's what I'm see. All right. Last but not least, what's next with the with the platform, with you? Like, what do you have your eyes set on?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit of a secret if you got lost.
Platform, it's a constant evolution every day. Building marketplaces, building platforms never really stops. Introducing new segments, trying to grow international, releasing new features. It's like a never-ending game of improvement. It's almost like trying to stay in shape. It's like we constantly have to keep working out every week and like making small gains. And hopefully, if you find a big innovative home run, that becomes the 10x growth factor, right? That could be a category, that could be a host, that could be a region you go into, right? So all those things we'll constantly look at, constantly toying with. It could be the host. Yeah, could be a host. I know. So, I think with NTWRK, it's never going to stop. And I'm 4.5 years into what is usually a 10-year journey to find the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Agenda took me 10 years. Like most people have this like overnight success kind of like mentality. They think things happen really fast. Usually it's a long time with a lot of thankless years. So, we're just heads down working, trying to build something great and find that innovation and that 10x contributor somewhere along that path. And we're squarely in the middle of that. And then with me in general, all I say is I'm doing more, I guess, investing, advising to startups. I just invested in a exciting new sunscreen brand, which is launching later this year, which I'm excited about. I'm interested in that because I want to be involved with products that serve a purpose. I've done a lot of things like that are really exciting from a consumer culture standpoint, but like ultimately it doesn't serve any purpose. No one needs that t-shirt or that sneaker to survive. But like, okay, like skin cancer rates are rising, like there's a product. You can make sunscreen cool, get people to use it every day. It's actually solving a real problem. And I think I look back on my career, while I've been very effective at helping people move, cotton and rubber at mass scale in various forms, like I never really helped anyone or did anything. So while sunscreen can be cool and it's a beauty product, it also serves a purpose. And I want to be involved in more things that actually solve a problem, serve a purpose, and have more than just a rapid consumerism use. Doesn't mean the branding shouldn't be awesome, the campaigns can't, absolutely, but like, how do you do something that actually serves a tangible purpose? And eventually I want to do that kind of stuff full time.
I love this like growth. Like, I go, we started off with you as 19 and then like all these sort of lessons you learned incrementally over the years. That's pretty awesome. Caleb. You got any questions?
No. Okay. Yeah.
Caleb, we met Caleb earlier. He had to run out and get pizza because
I was going to the meeting for that.
Cool, man. Look, thank you for joining us. This has been awesome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You have any questions for me?
I mean, I'm the first guest. How did I do? I don't know.
How did I know? This is more your experience than it is mine. How did I do?
You good?
No, you did great.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right.